Now let us discuss how speech sounds are produced. If we do that, then we are doing articulatory phonetics. So how do you produce a speech sound? First of all speech sounds are the result of some form of modification or obstruction to a stream of air in the upper respiratory tract. What do we mean? We mean that every speech sound that you make, whether p or e, happens because the air from your lungs, here are the lungs, the air from your lungs is changed or blocked in some way in the top path of the breathing system, that is the upper respiratory tract. So whenever the stream of air coming out from your lungs is somewhat blocked or obstructed in the upper respiratory tract, then there is going to be a production of the speech sound. What is the next step? When the air is built up, the stream of air escapes from the lungs and passes along the vocal tract. So the air that is built up in your lungs escapes and passes along the vocal tract. Here is the vocal tract, this part of your respiratory system. So the air from your lungs will pass through the larynx, that is your voice box, and then it will escape and pass through your pharynx, your throat area, and the air will either pass through the oral or the nasal cavity. So for example, when the air that is coming from your lungs passes through the oral cavity, then you are going to get an oral sound. When it passes through the nasal cavity, that is your nose area, then you are going to produce a nasal sound. So let us see where the stream of air passes, whether the oral or the nasal cavity, for these sounds. First one, Try pronouncing the sound yourself. Here you have completely obstructed the air coming out from your lungs by closing the two lips. Therefore, you have forced the air to pass through your nasal cavity. So is a nasal sound because the air coming from the lungs passes through the nasal cavity. Try saying this sound. Ooh. Where does the stream of air pass? It obviously passes through your mouth, which means the oral cavity. So that is what happens when the lungs release the air. So that is it. First of all, it begins with a simple breath. If you breathe out, the air from your lungs starts moving upwards. And then it goes on a little road trip through your vocal tract. But how is the sound produced if we are only releasing air? That brings us to the third step. That is, the air pressure built up in the vocal cords makes them vibrate. So inside your larynx, we have the vocal cords. They are two tiny but mighty folds. When the air pushes through them, then they are going to vibrate, just like guitar strings make sound when you plug them. That is the heart of your voice. So if you will be able to produce the sound with the air that is coming from your lungs, then your vocal cords must vibrate. Now what happens if there is vibration of the vocal cords? The next thing is that the vibrations are transmitted by the stream of air to reach the human ear, and it is carried to the brain and perceived by a person as voice. So the listener's ear, the one listening to you speak, picks up those vibrations, and then it sends, that is, the ear sends the vibrations to the brain, and then the brain gets it. The brain will say, oh, okay, so you are talking to me. And then the brain will understand the speech sound that was produced. So generally, this is how speech sounds are produced. It all starts by a stream of air released from your lungs. That stream of air passes through your vocal tract. And because of the vibrations in the larynx, those vibrations would be transmitted to the person's who is listening's ear. And the person's ear will also send a signal to his or her brain, and the brain will detect it as a sound. We have also learned that the air coming out can pass through the nasal cavity, or it can pass through the oral cavity. This is how speech sounds are produced. So the entire process of turning airflow into voice is what is called phonation. It happens very fast, so you will not even notice whether the air is coming from the lungs, whether it has reached your larynx. It happens very fast, unless maybe you are explaining it on YouTube as I'm doing. So this is how speech sounds are produced.